Hello, friend. Welcome, everyone, to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Mr. Robot Season 4, Episode 8. It's called 408, Request Timeout. So, full spoilers for the episode, as always. So, how do you follow up last week's episode? How do you follow up one of the most gut-wrenching, game-changing episodes of the season? Well, this, basically. You do this episode. Which obviously has Elliot going on a journey. It also has Darlene and Dom back in it with Janice, and follows up on that plot, which makes some amount of sense. Which is nice because it breaks up the Elliot stuff a little bit, where we kind of need it this time, because it's like, oh, we spent all the episode with Elliot last episode. We kind of need to break up his like slow.
We need to see something else.
Emotional journey. So we sort of go back and forth between the two plots. So I got my notes. We're going to work through it. We'll get into it.
And open with a flashback.
And this, well, before I just what I want to say is as a something of a bonus, Connor instructed me to go back and watch the dream sequence when Elliot was in withdrawal in season 1, episode 4, which is a scene we've mentioned a few times of being kind of foreshadowing in some ways, but it'd been a while since I actually watched it. And I watched a part of it. I watched the part with Angela talking to him a few weeks ago. Because part of it felt relevant when we were talking about third personalities. But I didn't watch the whole thing. This time, before we started, basically, I went and watched like the full 10-minute chunk or whatever it was, from start to finish. So, at the end, we'll dive into that, because I did take some notes.
Yeah. I only instructed that because, as we were talking about last week about wanting to rewatch it, I did manage to start rewatching it. I found an excuse in that my girlfriend hasn't really watched. She's seen the odd episode that I've, when she's been in the room while I've been watching them, because I wasn't waiting. So she knows some of the bigger beats, but she'd not really sat down and watched it. So I was like, we'll sit down and I'll just watch it with you. And that'll give me an excuse to rewatch it. So we got through the first 5. And so we did like 4 and 5 yesterday. So when stuff sat down in this episode, it was very fresh for me. So I was like, okay, there's stuff there.
So, we do start a flashback. We start in 1995. It is young Elliot running around a museum. Where we've been before. This was the end of season 1. This was when Angela and Darlene were coming to try and find him, because he'd been here before. This is one of the places he'd ran off to before. And he wasn't there. But, so we knew this was something that he'd done in the past. So he's there. He's there with Angela. So again, sort of connecting those dots. Makes sense that Angela would know about this, because she was there with him. Apart from the fact that her and Darlene found him there years later at some point during the breakdown. I noted that he has a Marty McFly-esque jacket. It wasn't quite Marty McFly's jacket from Back to the Future, because it wasn't the it's like almost like a puffy waistcoat Marty's got over his denim jacket. He doesn't have that, but his jacket here did have kind of the rows of thick, kind of bubbly kind of design.
Okay. I'm with you.
I think it was well, we know he's a fan of the movie, so I think it was clearly something he'd asked for, because hey, that looks like Marty McFly's.
That sounds perfectly plausible.
Jacket. To put it in context of the movie, the guy in the 50s referred to it as a life preserver. It wasn't, but that's what he thought it was, because it looked kind of puffy.
I can see why.
Yeah. So, yeah, and he goes to a storage room where there is, in fact, a robot. It's not a real robot, obviously, but there's a big robot for an old display in there. And he hides something behind a brick in this room. And
it's worth noting, he is very clearly talking to an imaginary friend.
Of some kind, yeah. And what I think what's interesting is that they actually show it because he's a kid like an imaginary friend. We don't see a character. We don't see, Christian Slater standing there with his hat on, like...
Yeah, this was really interesting for a couple of reasons. One, showing it that way. It's something we've never really seen done before. It works because kids have imaginary friends.
Barring the scene was in the previously on when he was in the movie theater, he did turn to someone in the seat next to him. So we have seen it before with the kid.
Oh yeah, with the kid. Which is what I was going to say is this didn't feel like he was talking to Mr. Robot. At least to me, it didn't feel like that was who he was talking to. If he was, he was the one saying, "Oh, trust me, this is what we're going to do." He had a lot more confidence. Maybe it's just because he was a kid. I don't know. But it felt completely different to however any relationship we've ever seen with Mr. Robot.
Yeah, I took it as just it's because he's a kid. And maybe the version of Mr. Robot that was there when he was a kid was a little bit different just because he's a kid and he's created him differently.
Possible, yeah.
Because I'm kind of on the train now that the third personality is just young Elliot, or his true self, or however you want to phrase it. Mainly because it just it makes more sense right now and clicks together. I feel like the introduction of a completely third personality now that is another adult would feel very weird to me.
Maybe there is a theory I have seen that actually goes back to something you commented on last week,
Oh,
which could be interesting. Is that the third personality is another version of Mr. Robot, and there's two different Mr. Robot personalities, one with the hat and one without. And because last week you mentioned, have we ever really seen him without? We haven't seen him without a hat much. And going back and watching season 1, he's without the hat most of the time. When Elliot has no idea who he is, and he's very cold and in control. He has very, very rarely got the hat. So I do wonder if there is something to that.
Interesting. I mean, I think I kind of see that more as a difference in his attitude, or a difference in how he's been presented at the time, as opposed to it's two different versions, or literally two characters.
I'm with you for the most part, because I just thought I'd mention it because when I was watching it, those first few episodes, I was seeing him without the hat, and I was like, this does feel very different, and I wonder if that hat is kind of a signifier, not of another person. Because I saw that after I'd been watching a couple, but more just is that an indicator of his attitude in general at that point?
Yeah, I would take young Elliot's phrasing and the way he talks to him just to be he's a kid, and maybe like Mr. Robot is also, I don't want to say a kid because he's meant to be his dad or based on his dad, but just in that whatever he could create could only really have the mentality that he himself could have.
That would make sense, yeah. But my only thing is I didn't really see him looking up at this other person. He was always looking across, like they were a similar height to him in his head. But yeah, maybe that's just nothing.
Yeah, but adult Elliot does that too.
Yeah. But again, they are similar heights now, aren't they?
Yeah, well, Mr. Robot at the time was a similar height. He was...
Okay, fine.
I mean, it could be something. Right now, I'm going to put...
I'm just... The way it hid it from us, and the fact that they didn't just show us Mr. Robot there, made me feel like there was something to hide, and that there was another personality there to hide from us that wasn't just Mr. Robot. But I could be just way off and imagining things.
Because they didn't want to show Christian Slater on his knees so he's the same height, sort of shuffling around next to him.
I'm sure they wouldn't have done that.
Esmail will try a lot of wacky things. He's a madman. So there we go to present day Krista's. I mean, just at the end of that scene is that he comes out of the room. Young Angela kind of finds him in that room with the big map, with the balcony. That's the big part of this location we kind of recognise from originally seeing it, because it was the most visually sort of distinct.
Because they're supposed to be playing hide and seek, I assume, and Elliot's kind of terrible at it.
Well, he had an agenda. He wasn't really playing. That was just like, that'll get me away from her for 5 minutes while I can go and plant
but he didn't even try and hide afterwards. He just kind of ran out in plain sight.
He got caught up. He was looking at the beautiful map. He was overtaken by it. So then we go to Krista's. Vera's lying dead. His phone's ringing. Elliot's staring at young Elliot, who's just not saying anything, just standing there staring at him in the fireplace. Or in front of the fireplace, I should say. And the henchmen are outside, and Krista's like, no, they're going to come up, we have to go. They're ringing his phone, yada yada. And she has to and this is the way that the shot does this, is she literally has to block his view of young Elliot. She comes right into frame, right in her face, to block the view, to say, no, we need to go right now. And this is more a Krista, protecting him and making sure, trying to help him and make sure he's okay. This is, making sure he's not here when the bad guys get back to potentially kill him.
It's such a shift from just, a handful of episodes ago where she was utterly terrified of him in the street.
Yeah, that feels natural to me, just in terms, and maybe this is just a movie TV thing, but the idea of after a while, the terror situation you're in becomes the normal, and you find yourself becoming braver. It's Sarah Connor in the Terminator, that ultimately living through it, you become stronger. And
no, it wasn't a complaint that I was making. Just noting that how she has shifted back to closer than ever with Elliot. I would say, because I say she always had a decent relationship with him as his therapist, and then obviously she got scared, but then. Now it's she's actively going out of her way, going above and beyond what she would have had to do.
Right. So The henchmen do come up. They have a whole conversation about wanting to pee and not wanting to go to the Arby's and yada yada yada. I like how it revealed how they found Vera on the floor. It's kind of just that following them coming in. We just see the reaction to it. We don't necessarily see the body. Not until one of them goes down to get the phone out of his pocket.
The wallet.
Sorry?
It was the wallet.
Oh, sorry, the wallet, yeah, sorry. And we see Krista and Elliot get into a taxi. And notably, they set up these TVs in the taxis back in the first episode of like the playing ads or whatever for E-Corp. And funnily enough, we see Tyrell wishing everyone a happy Christmas. So it was nice to see him again.
Yeah,
possibly for the last time. I don't know. But part of me is expecting in the final episode to somehow see every character who's died, because this season's been killing them off without any remorse.
It's funny because when I was watching the first couple of episodes, I was like, man, it's crazy how many of these are dead now.
Yeah. I mean, even later on when we started about Dom's story, like I really believed they were killing Dom because I'm like, well, everyone else has been killed so far this season.
It's one of those things where final season, no one said, don't get me wrong, this show has killed people before anyway. But final season, all bets are off.
So we go to Dom's mum's house. The family's all around for Christmas. There's kids. There's other aunties and uncles and whatever. Some of the kids are fighting about the card game they're playing. One of them says a wonderful thing to his aunt, Dom's mum. He says, good. "Split my dick hole," when she says she's splitting the deck. Because she's not siding with either. She's no, we'll do it fair and split it 50-50. And he's like, "Split my dick hole." So
I love that you can hear the mother in the background. They send him for a timeout. So I don't know where he learned language like that. Probably for his father. What a son of a bitch.
Actually, you're missing a key part there that I was going to mention. Just to poke a hole in it. She says probably from his father. He probably let him watch SummerSlam again. So
that was it. Yeah.
First of all, SummerSlam, as the title would imply, takes place in the summer. It's in August, right? So that's a weird thing to say in December.
Maybe they taped it.
First of all. Secondly, wrestling, but particularly WWE, who do SummerSlam, have been kid-friendly for way over a decade and intentionally want to be suitable for young children. So that's made me giggle. I would not be
surprised, though, if this is one of those things like, you know how like your mum calls every console a Nintendo.
Sure. No, I get it.
All of it's SummerSlam.
I'm not saying it's a mistake in the writing. I'm pointing out the flaw in what she's saying.
I have faith that the writers know that.
Probably do.
I'm sure a quick Google could have answered that question. And like I say, SummerSlam, the clue's in the name, so that's why to me it felt like, because even I thought that. I was like, it's probably just one of those things where they're all SummerSlam to her.
But even that's strange though, because WrestleMania is the main one. Like that's the one.
No, I get that.
That's the Super Bowl. That's
yeah.
Anyway, but the more important part here is that as this has been said, as he's walking to the front room, it's all one shot. It's this beautiful oner sort of following him, and it neatly sort of goes past all the other family members. There's an uncle at a table. There's another couple of kids. There's like a granny or someone, with some food or whatever. And what this is really neat is when he gets to the front, and it breaks from the shot. He does a new shot, and he's looking out the window, and he sees like these masked men all coming up to the front door, and he's doing some normal backs and forths with the cuts. But what's beautiful about this is that when the bad guys come in, we get basically a reverse oner where it follows the bad guy, or at least one of the bad guys, going back through the house from the exact same sort of path that the kid took. But that now, as he's going through it, we're seeing all the various family members either being hit or tied up or have guns pointed at them. Yeah. It does this neat thing where it's the exact same shot in reverse, but following the bad guy now instead. It was a really nice sort of
clever,
back and forth. So that was really nice. Then we go to Darlene's place, which is really Angela's old place, but for the purpose of this episode, it's Darlene's. So yeah, and Janice is one of these villains who likes to monologue a little bit about stuff that's kind of tangentially, thematically related when she gets to her point, because she's talking about cities are made by lightning, and she's talking about the creation of cement and how cement was discovered, because it was at Greece. The cement struck some marble,
limestone.
Was it limestone, and it made cement by accident, and it was like, oh, cement. But the point she's getting at is that it's amazing what can come out of some one moment of violent convergence, was the phrase she used, which I did think was nice wordplay. To be honest, I thought that was a nice little bit.
Like, what would have happened if the lightning hit, a puppy? I
Then,
was like, then you got fried puppy, hadn't you?
then, well, first of all, I'm sure lightning has struck puppies many a time. It's just that on this particular instance, it did the notable thing. And if it hadn't done it now, I'm sure we'd have come across concrete at some point in civilization.
I mean, law of averages would say that the lightning probably hit limestone again at some point.
Yes, or maybe I don't know. Maybe we advanced in other ways, and then eventually we just got to the point where some scientists actually just cracked it and said, "Oh, hey, I've got this idea."
It could happen.
Let's see what happens if we apply this much electricity to some limestone. Like,
it could happen.
I buy it. So, yeah, back to Virgin. We find out the phone is useless because Darlene wiped it. Janice is trying to convince her to sort of reverse what she did or help them, and she says, "Eat shit and die." She later on calls her a C-stick, and by C-stick I mean a C-bomb.
That is a great insult. I'm using that at work. I'll tell you that now.
And basically, Janice reveals that she's like, "Hey, we didn't think you'd ever go through with this. I hoped you would, but deep down I knew you didn't have it in you." And she's like, "Because I'm not a murderer." And he's like, "No, because of how much you care about Darlene." And she's like, "What are you talking about? Like, what could you possibly like?" And we know that she does to some extent, but she's never said anything out loud. She's never done anything. He's like, "Well, what about that interrogation footage that you keep using?"
That police footage we had a random debate of for like 15 minutes about that seemed really irrelevant at the time.
Yes, he's like, "Oh yeah, you've been pleasuring yourself to that," and I love the way Darlene turns and looks at her like when she said,
"She's like, oh, have you now?"
Like. That's something that very few people will ever find out, that someone has used a piece of footage to masturbate to. It's something, unless you're in the porn business and just assuming it about everything.
I once knew a guy who, he had told his girlfriend that, before they got together, he did that to a Facebook picture. I'm like, how would you tell them that?
That's creepy as shit. That's weird. That is creepy as shit. I don't.
Yeah. It was weird.
It's creepy as shit. Also weird that he told you later. This guy opens up too much to people.
He didn't tell just, but this was something that everyone kind of knew after a point.
Okay.
It went around. Weird. I don't know who he told first, but
so Janice pulls out her knives because this isn't working. And Darlene kind of challenges and says, "Well, if whatever you're going to do, just do it quickly because I'm not going to help you." And she's like, "Okay," and she just stabs Dom within a second. Because she's right in Darlene's face. She just does it. It's sort of like off to the side. She just quickly stabs Dom, and it's like, okay, well, don't pull the knife out because I'm pretty sure where I stabbed her. If you pull it out, it's just going to exacerbate.
I want to quote the exact things.
Oh, you go on.
Because there's a thing she says, "I'm not a doctor, but I'm 99% sure I just punctured a lung." The reason that's notable is because, well, 99% isn't good enough for Janice now, is it?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point.
So I'm wondering, did she?
Given that Dom seems to be surviving long enough later on, I'm going to say that she probably didn't.
Possibly, yeah.
Probably didn't. So yeah, we kind of leave there. Janice actually has a really funny ending to this scene where she's kind of explaining, like, well, we were at a stalemate, and I thought this might be the quickest way to exacerbate like this our situation. Does that make sense? Like, she ends it in a kind of, again, just that thing where she's kind of like a dead mother. Like, does that make sense, honey? Like,
Yeah.
So then we go to it was in a police station, which is where Krista and Elliot have went to. And she's going to go in. Elliot's not going to. That becomes clear very quickly. But the conversation here, a couple of quotes I've pulled down is, he says, "What do people like me do?" He phrases it like 5 times in various ways, but that's ultimately what he's saying. And then he says something really interesting. He says, "I should have fought him." He starts to blame himself for not fighting back. Which again, the idea of a victim blaming themselves, probably a very natural part of processing this information. And obviously she's like, no, you did nothing wrong. You were a child. You even if it wasn't a child, adults can be victimized. But like, she's making it very clear.
Even more so, this was you were a child, and it was someone in a position of power. This is your father. What are you going to do?
And we have some extreme framing here where, Elliot has some headroom, but Krista's was interesting because Krista had no headroom, but she was, like, much like Elliot, really over to the extreme side. In her case, it was the right.
Yes.
And there was a lot of empty space on the left, but more so than usual. Because, you have typically, like, I'm set up here, right? You're sort of looking into your talking space, more or less, right?
Yeah.
You're in the middle. You don't count.
I know. I was going to move, and I was like, I can't be bothered.
Yeah. And then the opposite to do is to have someone framed so they're looking the other way, right? So my talking space is behind me. And I guess I get that the audio people aren't getting this visual representation, but you still have me at the third, sort of, and it's kind of balanced in the opposite way, and that tells you that something's wrong because it feels kind of off-putting. This is the extreme where not only are they not looking in the right direction, they're much over to the side of the frame.
Yeah, they're basically where Pete's hand is now, but just on the opposite side.
Yes. So, well, Elliot was in that side.
Yeah, no, it's not about Krista. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and I thought it was interesting, like, he had headroom and she didn't. It made him feel smaller, like he was needing the help, and she was there to give it, and she did have some kind of like comfort and authority that provided that. Just visually, it kind of had that impression. So, yeah, and he even says he made me feel special, which to which she says, "You are special. No, nothing he did will take that away." But again, hearing Elliot say these things, like, I should have fought him, he made me feel special, I know, it kind of brought that sick feeling back of, like, and he notices young Elliot, specifically when she says, you shouldn't go through this alone, go find someone, find Darlene, whoever, and this is when he notices young Elliot watching him from like across the street at the subway entrance. To which he then goes and follows him down to the train. But Krista does hug him and says she wants to see him again. Elliot tries to say, "No, you don't have to. Like, you don't have to take care of me anymore." She said, "No, I want to." So her fear of him seems to have dispelled because of the events.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So, no, a really sweet scene. There was a lot of scenes with Elliot in this episode where the music was just this really somber, sweet kind of emotional stuff, and
very, very soft.
He's acting his ass off, as he does.
As always.
Yeah. To be fair, everyone with him in these scenes typically were as well. Maybe not the kids as much, but this scene here and then the scene at the end with Mr. Robot were both,
spectacular.
Yeah. So we'll go back to Darlene's. Dom's wheezing on the floor. Janice says she has pluck and she could be a good mole. There's always growing pains, so she's not necessarily thinking this is over yet. Like, we'll solve this situation, then we can have her back on the force and doing whatever.
They don't want to lose her. She could asset.
And it's around this time as a lot of bird's eye shots start popping into these scenes of Darlene and Dom. And notably later on in the scene, it starts to spin when Janice kind of like starts to like get threatened, because there's sort of like a down period here where Janice is making small talk with Darlene, and then when she says, "Okay, I thought this would be actually over by now, you'd have seen the light, I guess I'll have to do something else," and she gets up to move over to like another phone, the camera goes to the bird's eye shot again, spins with her. It feels like their whole room's turning, like their whole world is turning, which kind of really emphasizes just how much they're in the palm of her hands right now, because they're trapped.
It's all revolving around her.
So simple stuff. And I loved how she said, she was trying to say how much she likes Dom's mum, but she kind of describes it as, isolate the mark, find a pressure point, a pain point, the usual. But she's a really nice woman. Like, she just says it so casually. The usual, like Darlene's ever thought about how someone infiltrates like a family or a mark or whatever. I don't know.
She's terrifying. How completely mundane this is to her.
But it does, and she even says something about how she was tested in high school because her parents were worried that her taxidermy hobby was a sign that she was a psychopath. And they've probably seen Psycho, they've seen Norman Bates do it, and they're like, this is terrifying, let's go check her. But no, all the tests said she was normal.
Yeah, and Darlene doesn't quite buy that.
No. So listing Dom's family members, saying there's kids, saying that her parents are there, blah blah blah.
Like 12 or 13 of them in total.
And she's going to kill them. Get the guys outside the house to kill them. That's when Darlene breaks and says, "I'll do it." So that's kind of the end of the scene. Now, what's interesting is we've already seen people break into the house. Now, it actually really works when the reveal happens later, but at this point, because it kind of clashes with what we saw, to a point, my head was like, "Oh, it means that they're already in the house and they've got them at gunpoint. They're literally in like a hostage situation, kind of like this."
Yeah, they had them rounded up and they were just ready to. Okay, we've got the order.
Yeah, so that if they do get the order, then they can just do it instantly. There's no wait time.
No faffing about, yeah.
Yeah.
No,
obviously,
that's definitely how it felt like in the moment.
Yeah, obviously there's a nice twist later with this stuff. But then we go to the museum where young Elliot's Elliot. He mentions how he thought he'd ran here to get away, as if he was a coward, as if, this is part of him not fighting back. When they get inside and they look at the big map, he says, "I'm sorry I let him do these things to you." He sort of, again, this is coming back to me seeing the kid as the third personality. He's talking to him like, this is my, in the way that Mr. Robot's supposed to protect him, it's like, I'm sorry I didn't protect you.
Yeah, no, I generally kind of agree with you. It's just the bit, like in that inside Elliot's head at the end of an episode a few ago, where the kid's like, oh, the mother, we're waiting on someone else. It felt like there was someone else that we hadn't seen to come to be the other personality.
I will say, returning to this museum was really nice, just in the sense that, again, we're bringing back season 1 stuff from the very start. It's all feeling really relevant again, and it all feels kind of put together. So they go to the storage room. This is why young Elliot's brought him here. And notably, the sign that's moved, I really kind of like this touch, because I noticed it in the first scene, but this is really the important part, because Elliot says the sign is moved. It used to be over there, and it was. I remember it being over there. But notably, the sign is the word tomorrow. So I just wrote down, tomorrow has moved.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, it took me a while to read the sign at the angle it was at, and I really don't like that font. I struggled to read that sign at first.
I was fine. It's just the space age atomic, font.
I don't know. I think it was the font, and then like a couple of the letters were in shadow, and I was like, "What does it say?" Because I was sat there like for a good 10 seconds.
When the camera pulls back, there's this nice, great beam of light hitting it from some of the lights outside. It's a really nice shot. But no, I just love that nice touch that tomorrow has literally moved since he was a kid. What tomorrow was then is not what tomorrow is now. Really simple stuff, but really effective. Inside the brick, or behind the brick rather, is a little pouch, a little zipper, and inside it a key, which we found out right away is the key to Elliot's bedroom as a kid. And the kid version of Elliot points out though it was the dad's key to her room. We hid it here because that could stop him from getting in. It would lock him out. And Elliot realizes that he was in his own way as a kid fighting back. Like, this was how he could fight back. Was trying to outsmart him. So
yeah, Elliot's kind of, it's like, okay, no, he always has been like that and tried to fight. He just didn't realize it.
Yeah. So it's a moment of strength for him. And the kid actually even went one step further and said, hid the key so the monster couldn't get to us. Now, even before I rewatched the stuff we're going to talk about at the end from episode 4, season 1, just the word monster there made me think of it, because the one thing I vividly remember about that was talk of a monster. So, so I'm pointing out here.
It was one of those moments where when I heard it, I went, oh, that's the monster kind of thing. And I'm like, that it makes so much sense.
Oh, it does, yeah. So we go to Krista's place just for a split second, because one of the Dark Army henchmen's just confirming this is where Elliot's phone trace led. Elliot's phone is still there. It's not with him, so they can't find him that way.
Yeah.
And
they're not happy about this. They're like, hey, Darlene, you should do better. You got to find her anyway.
Yeah, she says, oh, no. I mean, I don't know how to find him then. Like, if he's doing this, if his phone's not with him, it either means he doesn't want me to find him, because he does that sometimes, because he's Elliot. Have you met him? And secondly, or it means something's happened to him. And Janice calls her a filthy lying liar. I was expecting more swearing, honestly, but I'll take it.
She doesn't swear that much. She's very refrained and good, like, kind of good-natured in it, and then it'll just come out randomly.
Yeah. But Dom says she believes Darlene doesn't know it's a dead end. She knows when she's lying. This is not what this is. It's a dead end, so don't bother. And again, we get a spinning shot when she says, "Give me my phone." She's going to kill her family. They're ramping up because she's like, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to call Darlene's bluff and just find out for sure if you really do. Because
this is a really intense spin as well, because it's not just on one axis; it's going up and down as it moves. Yeah,
it's going around and looking at all their faces around the room. It spins around multiple times as this moment's happening. Yeah. Because I think to Janice, it's like, well, if I kill the family and we find out that there was no information, well, no biggie. But now we know. As opposed to, I feel bad now I've killed all the family because there was no information.
I think Dom points out the only thing that she'd be missing is the leverage on her.
Yeah, but she's willing to do that. But there's no answer. And Dom eventually is like, oh, no answer? Kind of, I mean, not quite smug. She's in too much pain to be smug. But, and Janice immediately is like, wait, why would you ask that? Why would you ask that, Dom? And she's like, well, you probably want to ask him. And she's like, who's him? Check my phone. He's probably been calling me. And It's the Irish dude that she interrogated briefly, who smuggled criminals like from places to new places, and the conversation on the phone with him and Janice is quite delightful for a number of reasons.
Oh, he's brilliant.
He's very delightfully Irish.
Aggressively so.
Notably, I mean, I had to give them a bit of the holy treatment back there. I shot them in the heads, love. That's all fun. That's all good and fine. For me, the best part though was the final line, where as he's saying goodbye, he just goes, "Ta-ta for now, you flange."
That was good.
I was not expecting that.
I quite enjoyed the bit where, it was clean kills. Well, some of them probably shot themselves.
Well, no. What he said was
the exact quote. Okay.
What he said was if it makes you feel better, they died with dignity. Well, a couple of them might have shot themselves, but
that was it. Yeah.
So what's happened here is Dom's actually essentially got him out of his charge. She's got him a technicality to get out, and as a thank you, as a sort of trade.
Payment. Yeah.
He's got all of her family and take them to a safe house away from the Dark Army, protecting them so that she doesn't have to worry about them. This was just the right amount of setup so that I didn't see it coming, but it didn't feel cheap. Just the right amount.
No, it worked. I think it's around this time we're getting all the sideways shots, one from Dom's point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So she's laying on her side on the floor. But we get an interesting one whenever Darlene looks down at Dom, which isn't just the reverse though, because it's sideways for her, even though Dom, Darlene's not sideways, Dom is. So it's weird to have it from that perspective that it's still looking sideways. It kind of give it this weird effect.
Yeah, of course, they had to say, my note for this is just Dom Wick. That's what I've written down for this. Dom managed to free her hands enough that she grabs the knife that was in her chest, and she slashes the henchman that's around his ankle, grabs his gun, shoots Janice in the head, the henchman behind her. I think the henchman first.
I think it's the henchman first, yeah.
And then finally shoots the henchman she slashed the ankle of behind her. She just goes like that with her gun behind her and shoots them in the head. Very badass moment. There's a big crowd pleasing moment for Dom, and you feel really happy. Really, really good stuff. And when Darlene comes in and she's like gives her a phone and she's like and Dom makes a call saying officer down, come to this. So help's on the way for Dom, and she's like, you have to go, Darlene. And Darlene's saying, sorry, no, I'm not leaving you. That's shitty. I'm not going. I did all this to you. This is my fault. And she says, if you want to help me, go find Elliot and take them down. So,
yeah. And I'm not wrong. This could be Dom's death. They could, if they tell me, oh no, she didn't survive. Right? Sure.
I mean, there's a chance we'll never see her again, and we'll never answer if she survived or not. Compared to the others though who have left the show this season, this one seems like no, she's probably going to be okay, but we might not necessarily see her again because her story's done.
I agree. I think this one's an interesting parallel with Tyrell in that it feels like we might not ever see him again, but he might be dead. But there's a chance that he's alive. Whereas this one feels more hopeful. I think that I'm far more convinced she would live.
I think Dom, our character's more deserving of living. Like Tyrell, murdered someone in season 1 and has done a lot of shady stuff. Dom's someone who we actually kind of want to see have a happy ending because she does. She has a good person. She has a noble sense of right and wrong, and she hates that she's been used in this way. So we want her to have a happy ending. So I think if this is the last we see of her, I think it works for her. I still kind of expect her to show up helping Elliot and Darlene at some point, just because.
I would not be surprised if she shows up as backup at some point.
Yeah. So. Really cool stuff. So Darlene runs for it, and that takes us to our final scene, which is at All Safe, which is interesting that Elliot is at a place called All Safe now. That even from the start of the show, given his past, he works at a place called All Safe to feel safe. I don't know. And even later on, when Mr. Robot shows up, I say later on, it's just after a few close-ups of Elliot's hand shaking, he's clearly a bit shaken still. I mean, literally about everything he's learned. He's still doing his hacking, but he's clearly hesitating. So literally, Mr. Robot is standing behind him, and he's got his hat off, but it's in his hand. Notably, it's not missing.
Yep.
He's holding it, and he's kind of like caressing it. But I did notice that the words "all safe" were right next to him. And it's just saying, like, no, he is safe. Like, he's not in danger right now. Mr. Robot is not a threat.
It's not a threat, no.
So he's holding his hat, and he's really, and this is easily the most emotional we've ever seen Mr. Robot be. Like he's here, he's here for forgiveness. Elliot says sorry for the timeout, but I had to sort out through things, and Elliot doesn't look around, not until the very end of the scene. So for this whole first bit, he is not turning around, even though he occasionally does reply. And Mr. Robot's like, well, you don't have to talk, but let me speak. I was always around to protect you, to make sure no one would hurt you. That was your father's job. He failed. But you were strong. You created me so you could survive. Which is very interesting, because, again, looking at this from the perspective of Mr. Robot is part of Elliot, and part of Elliot's mind that was created to be a safeguard. The idea that he's now saying, I failed too, because I tried to keep this from you, and that maybe that wasn't the right thing to do. If you look at this scene of, this is two parts of Elliot's mind kind of like making amends with each other. And they're both parts of him, and you realise that everything Mr. Robot is part of Elliot's strength in a weird way.
Yeah, it is part of. We've seen a while that a seemingly obvious way for the show to end would be, the two parts to reconcile and just become Elliot, right? And this feels like a major step to that journey.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily literally merge. Like I could almost see a thing where they just all happily coexist, because they all are. Oh. They're all Elliot. They all exist together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I assume he survives. I'm kind of expecting Elliot to die. Although, given how dark this revelation was last episode, it kind of feels like he deserves to have a happy ending now.
A chance to actually live.
Yeah, like have a normal life. Yeah. I kind of want him to live now. I don't want a tragic death. I want them. Before that last episode, I was like, yeah, he can die in a sacrificial way, and Darlene can have the. Now I want them both to live, which
means it's going to hurt all that much more when he dies.
Yes. So. Yes, yeah, so he's gradually getting closer as he's giving this speech. He says, I failed you too. But the one thing I want you to definitely know, if you can never forgive me, you can never let me back in, shut me out forever, I understand all of it, but the one thing you need to know is that I'm not your father, and I never was. And Elliot says, I know. I created you. And I think the line that everyone's going to quote from this episode, really, the most quotable line is, you're the father I needed, not the father I had.
Yeah.
Beautiful stuff. Music's great during this scene as well. And then something that really caught my ears. This next line from Mr. Robot. If I could go back in time and change things, and I would, or whatever the end of it is, it doesn't matter. This whole show, up until this point, especially White Rose, has all been about this idea of going back in time. And it makes me wonder, the way that White Rose seems to understand Elliot in some level, does he understand that he has a trauma in his past to this extent that he just, and compare it to White Rose's backstory, where his lover, killed himself because they couldn't be together, and this was a whole thing. Like, even though I ultimately think that Elliot and White Rose are going to come down in terms of ideals on the opposite side, and it's still going to be the good versus evil to a point. Is this why White Rose thinks they share a connection? Because they both have this trauma in their past, and they're very different traumas, but...
Yeah, I think it's, we know that White Rose, when she gets in a room with someone, she can convince them. Like with Angela, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And, she said, no, Elliot, we're on the same side. It's like she thinks she can offer him, well, we can go back in time and change things. Yeah,
here's my theory for what this show is really about, and that's a bold statement, I know, but... He says that he wishes he could go back in time and change things. And that's a natural wish that lots of people have, right? And that's something that White Rose seems to actively be trying to do with his device, even if it's just in concept, even if it's not literally going back in time. That seems to be his whole motivation, is what happened in the past, and he wants to change the past. But the dramatic point that makes sense to me now is that the reason why Elliot is the hero of this show, the hero that sort of learns the lesson that this show is trying to teach, is that he will realize that you can change the past. You shouldn't try to change the past. Accepting it and living with it and growing stronger from it is the healthier thing to do.
He essentially says as much here in response. He says, I wouldn't change it because then I wouldn't be the person I am now. And
you wouldn't be here either, he says. Yeah. And that's acknowledging that Mr. Robot's a vital part of him that he needs.
Yeah.
And it's kind of beautiful, and I'm excited to see thematically, like him saying that line. It's so specific and so intentional. Him saying that line, if I could go back and change things, is so perfect because it thematically ties into the obsession. Take out anything else, it just ties into the obsession that White Rose has with trying to do something because of this event in the past, and even Angela fell prey to it and tried to change things in the past, and because of that faltered and failed. And I think Elliot, even if he dies doing it, is going to win because he's accepting his past. Because at this point we've found out that everything that's happened in the show, everything that's happened with his character, is because he was hiding a part of his past because he couldn't handle a part of his past.
Yeah,
I think that's there's probably a more elegant way to put it, but that's
no, I'm with you. It was great. Do you want what I think might have been my favorite moment of this scene is a much smaller moment comparatively, but it really hit. It's Mr. Robots. He's walking up as he's talking. And he goes to put his hand on Elliot's shoulder. And just before he puts it out, he hesitates for just half a second as to, should I do this? Does it, am I too much, like his father to him?
Will this bring some flashbacks? Will this, traumatize him?
He does put his hand down, he does, and Elliot is okay with it because like we say, Elliot knows that isn't his father.
Yeah.
But there's that moment where just hesitation before he does that I kind of loved.
Yeah, and he has this self-doubt here. He starts weeping and saying, I don't know if I can do the hack. I don't know if I can do anything, right? And this is something, this is the thing. Darlene has come away from the scene she just was in, probably more determined than ever, motivated than ever. And I feel like I am so looking forward to like her and Elliot being in the same room after this. I am looking forward to it. But there's something here and I noticed this in a second viewing that's actually a very interesting choice directing wise. The final shot, Elliot's weeping and Mr. Robert's got his hands on his shoulders and he's kind of holding him and maybe even weeping a little himself. Sure. We don't really see, but the camera pulls back and it's this big wide shot and it goes to black there. There's a dark element to this where the visual that we're seeing, if you look at it, is actually very reminiscent of what the actual act itself might have been when he was a kid. Mr. Robot standing behind him, Elliot's kind of weeping and saying, I can't do it. There's a very dark kind of like almost symmetry with something obviously we never saw and never should see. But
no, I get it. The idea that this thing that looks like his father is there consoling.
Yeah.
In a moment where he is susceptible now.
Yeah, because you've got him crying, you've got Mr. Robot kind of rubbing his shoulders. Not in a creepy way. That sounded creepy the way I said it, but he's kind of like he's got his shoulders and he's kind of trying to comfort him as he's weeping. And but the visual as it pulls back and it looks a bit more like this almost represents the sexual act that might have taken place when he was a kid.
I see what you mean.
So really dark touch to go out on. So no, great episode. Obviously, it's not as amazing as last week's because nothing was going to live up to it. Obviously,
I think it's actually one of the lower key episodes of the season overall. Don't get me wrong, still great TV, but on the lower end of the scale as this season goes for me personally.
Yeah, it felt so short compared to last week, even though it was only 13 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, it was the standard length that this show has been for most of the season.
Yep. But yeah, so 5 left. Episode flew in. I'm not ready for it to be over, but like I said, so I went back and watched this dream sequence, hallucination sequence, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And I took down some notes for it because I felt like, let's look at it a little bit.
And this is something that we've known for a long time is, quote, the key to the show. It is, Esmail himself has confirmed very much. Yeah, I know. Esmail himself has confirmed that, this does kind of set out all the plans, for the show overall.
And people have been going back and look at that scene talking about a monster when the voice comes over Angela's voice, the sort of demonic sounding voice. And sort of analysing that a lot, especially when we start talking about a third personality. But
even Darlene, the kid Darlene that we see, says to him, okay, first thing I got to ask you is, what's your monster, or who's your monster, maybe?
You're skipping ahead. Let me get through it in order.
Alright, fine.
Starts up with he kind of wakes up watching like an F Society video. Remember they used to do the mask videos. Yeah. And the speech here from the F Society dude, which is basically Mr. Robot because it's his voice, you can tell, is wake up from your slumber, retrieve lost, damaged, or stolen memory is like one of the key phrases that he says, which again, given that was last episode, he retrieved a lost, damaged, or stolen memory.
I think that's been a thing throughout the entire show. Like, as much as just even at that point when we had this, he didn't even know who Mr. Robot was or that it was part of him.
And then Elliot goes into the video again. It's like a dream sequence, so bear with the weird parts.
Just go with it, yeah.
And this F-City guy gives him a mask, takes off a mask and gives him a mask to hide his face, and hands him the key, the same key that we see in this very episode.
Yeah, that was what caught my eye. I mean, when he pulls the key out of this patch, I was like, "Holy shit, that's the same key from the dream sequence."
And even says, "Find the monster and turn the key." So again, I'm watching this. I'm like, yeah, all this is just completely relevant to what I literally just watched. And then he goes to his childhood street with a house. And we have the moment where, and I always remember this moment because it was like he gets to the house and then it disappears and it says 404 not found. And that's kind of beautiful, especially in the context now that we have where literally he repressed all of these memories of his childhood. So the house not being there, 404, not found, is really, really smart. And then he said you have the young Darlene who says, "Who's your monster?" And then he hands him the key because he's dropped it. She picks it up off the floor. And it's this idea that Darlene will help him recover his memories and help him along the way.
It's interesting, given that up until before this season, any time I've ever seen this discussed, the key is always referred to as that's like having the power over whatever they're doing. So who's in control?
Yeah.
Which I think does always plays, but I don't know if it's exactly that after this episode. After learning what this key actually is, I mean, you could say it was the control in the sense that Elliot took the control by using the key and hiding it himself. But
I mean, I wasn't really thinking about that during watching it again now with the current context we have. It was more just for me about unlocking the memories more than anything else. It was about unlocking and revealing stuff.
No, that makes sense. I know that has often been the read that a lot of the community has. So I wanted to kind of mention that in terms of who has the key kind of relates to who has the power or the secrets in any given season.
Yeah, and then he goes to his apartment. And Tyrell's there holding the key as well. He's sort of sitting at his desk playing with the key. And
notably, he doesn't give the key back and is completely ignored all scene.
Yes. Then the fish starts talking to him. Query, yes. I wasn't trying to think of his name, to be honest.
No, but I just want to remind everyone.
So it talks about his world's the same and nothing changes because he's in a tank. I took this as kind of describing Elliot, like he's shielded off from everything. So
yeah, I think he talks here about being in a loop, right?
Yeah, and then he's at a restaurant all of a sudden with Angela, who's eating the fish, and then he gets a bit of cherry pie.
Well, no. This I wanted to mention. It was interesting because one, it was raspberry pie, which was just a whole thing of
raspberry,
small confused. But it was interesting is the person who bring it over said it was Pop's raspberry pie, which I think is notable given that when he takes a bite out of it, the key is there, and it's literally handed to him on a plate. Hey, this key was your father's. It's all there.
Yeah, and then Angela says "I do" as if it's an engagement ring, which is weird that he's the one who eats it. Usually it's the person who's been proposed to who finds the ring in their drink or food.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a terrible idea. They may choke on it. Don't do it, people. It's just silly. It's a silly idea. Keys in the pie, and Elliot does say the fish is his friend. He says he's my friend. He also tries to say to Darlene, "Hello, friend," and she says I'm not your friend. And I think that one's not one that we can reveal now. I think that was one that was always just Darcy's sister. That's why she says that.
It's I'm not your friend because I'm your sister.
Because keep in mind at the time we didn't know that was Elliot's sister. And to a point, I mean, I think we were starting to speculate at that point, but we didn't necessarily know yet that Mr. Robot was part of Elliot either. Just to put it in perspective.
We were on the train of. He definitely, because I remember thinking all the time, like from like episode 2 or 3, you're kind of.
Oh thinking... yeah, it was after episode 2 or 3. I think everyone was starting to like, hey, wait a minute, there's something fishy about the way he's interacting with people and so on. So then this is the sort of big final scene where he's with Angela. She's in kind of like a dress and he's in a tux or whatever, implying that maybe they're going to be getting married in a minute or whatever. But they're in the F Society place. They're in the the amusement arcade, and.
Which is, again, a loop because it's back where we started, right?
Yeah, and she mentions... start of what? The show or the stream sequence?
No, the stream sequence with the video being back to F Society.
Oh, okay, sure. I guess so, yeah. That's not where we start in the sense that's not where he falls asleep, but yeah.
No, where he falls asleep, but it's the first. The F Society is the first part
Yeah.
of this sequence.
So she mentions you were only born a month ago, which I am now taking to mean it's been a month since this version of Elliot kind of like forgot everything again. And
quite possibly, because that even now I'm looking at it going, that's interesting. That line.
Because she says, "No, you're not going to do it. You're not going to succeed changing the world." But I mean, who could expect anything more? You've only been born a month. You were born a month ago. So to me, that says, yeah, that was when he kind of repressed everything again. He intentionally forgot again. Maybe intentionally is not the right word, but he.
You could be right. The only thing that throws me off on that is he was already going to Krista at the start of the show. So if this had not been repressed, if this had been repressed for less than a month, I feel she would have been aware of this a lot earlier. As a therapist, I don't know.
How long was he seeing Krista though when the show started?
It felt like a reasonable while. They had a relationship already in terms of.
It could have been a few weeks though. I mean,
it could have,
because this show, as we've seen, started in August 2015.
It was May.
Was it May?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. 5/9. I'm thinking that's September, not May, because of the way I write the date. Yeah.
So I guess it was April actually that it started.
Yeah, probably about April. So yeah, but it starts in April and ends in Christmas 2015. So the timeline doesn't move quickly. Like it's not like every episode's advancing that much. So yeah, that's my thinking there anyway. And then she says, "You're afraid of your monster." She also says the key doesn't fit. And then she ends with, "You're not Elliot, you're the," and then it cuts off. That's when the dream kind of cuts.
Yeah, I wish I knew. And in conjunction with the only born a month ago, I think there is a natural inclination to suspect that Elliot is not the dominant personality somehow that we've been seeing the whole time. You were only born a month ago. You're a new personality that was created. And you're not Elliot. I think there is an inclination to maybe think that, but I don't think it is.
No, that's not how I took it. I took it as going with what I just said about you were only born a month ago. It's just that you're not Elliot, meaning you're not the Elliot that knows everything. You're not the child to the Elliot who's grown up and actually has all the memories. Again, going back to the child is the third personality, and the true Elliot is really all three of them. The true Elliot is really all of them.
No, that would play very well. Yeah.
But that's how I took it. And obviously the voice comes over, which I'm sure, even though it's obviously distorted to make it sound really evil, I'm sure the voice that plays over hers here is probably Christian Slater. It's probably very intentionally him.
Almost certainly, yeah.
Because he is the monster, of course.
Yeah.
So, no, very good. So definitely, so much of that has a new context giving this episode and last episode. These two episodes have really changed that completely for everyone, I think. So it was worth going through it. But that is episode 8 of Mr. Robot. Season 4. Let us know what you think of it in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. Ding the bell on YouTube, make sure you get the notifications. If you want to support the show, you can do that a couple of different ways. You can rate the podcast on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars. Helps more people find us, as does, of course, sharing us out on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, link it to people. But of course, you can support us financially over at patreon.com/mailfuzztv, and you can do that for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your troubles. So go and have a look and see if you're interested. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?